Welcome back to Buried Cinema. I'm Nate.
I'm Kevin.
Steve.
I'm Tom.
I'm Brian.
We're going to try something curses.
We're going to try cursing.
I'm
Damn
it! No, I said and I had given that big speech about not saying before
this is
you.
our Tourette's podcast.
Yeah. We're going to try.
We're going to try grumbling and gurgling for an hour and see how that works.
We are going to try something different this week. Buried Cinema is a weekly, unscripted podcast that likes to talk about new and buried films. This week we're doing 2 buried documentaries. We're talking about This Film Is Not Yet Rated and Bully. But our format's going to change a little bit. We have been discussing how to make our format flow a little different, so we wanted to let you listeners know that we're going to be switching it up. We're going to be doing our review first, and then we're going to directly address like some kind of a topical question. And then I'm going to go to somebody who's going to give us a flick chart-like comparison. They have randomly chosen a movie, and they're going to compare it to the movie that we're discussing. We think this will help it flow a little bit better, and that way you don't have to listen to us ramble on for like 10 minutes before we move to our next 10-minute ramble. We're crossing our fingers on that one.
It's a quicker rambling.
Yeah, it's a quicker ramble. Yeah.
It's like shotgun ramble.
Mm-hmm. We also want to give a shout out to our listeners on Google Listen, Stitcher, and iTunes. If you listen to us, please rate us on iTunes, vote for us on Stitcher. We really appreciate that. Do whatever Google Listen does.
I think it's a +1
Yeah,
because
give us a
everything else
+1.
Google does is +1.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
We can at least get +5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We just like you know that we're there. We're featured on Stitcher. We are specifically a podcast about film, and we would appreciate it if you would vote for us and send us comments about how we can fix things, because we listen to them and do whatever you ask. Please do not ask for us to do something weird like wear women's clothing, because
we will make Tom do it.
yeah.
It doesn't really help for the listening people. We'll tell you about it.
Yeah.
We'll describe it.
We'll describe it. It's a nice veneer. All right. I don't know why women are wearing these things. This Film Is Not Yet Rated came out in 2006. It's directed by Kirby Dick, who is a documentary filmmaker, kind of known for his... The easiest way to say it is kind of muckraking, is digging up stories. Muckraking has a real negative connotation to it, but that's what he's doing. He's digging up issues that need to be addressed. Kirby Dick is a very good documentary maker.
Yes.
He's important. A lot of people have not seen his films, but
No.
okay, all right. Calm down. All right. This Film Is Not Yet Rated is directed by Kirby Dick. It is about the MPAA, and specifically about their ratings board and how they rate movies, and how it is done, according to him, unfairly. And about how independent films are slammed a little bit harder, about how sex is gauged a lot harder than violence, and about how also homosexual sexual acts are gauged in the same way, a lot harder. And that he's mostly focusing on the switch between NC-17 and R, how you distinguish between those two, and between R and PG-13. He doesn't talk too much about, the big scandals and G-rated to PG-rated switches, But there's a lot out there, let me tell you.
Well, they do show death in some G movies.
Mm-hmm. I remember there was a big stink when Incredibles came out, and it was PG. And people were like, it's the first Pixar PG film. Yeah. And they were like, well, people die in it.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, I don't know if you can do that. And they're like, well, it's PG. Right. People can die in PG movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're going to get into that. So this film is not yet rated. Was actually, it's got a fascinating history. It was actually kind of censored because the MPAA, which he actually shows in there, didn't rate it. They gave it a rating that he rejected and tried to appeal, and they wouldn't change it. And so it was NC-17, so he had to release it unrated.
We could have released it.
Yeah, released it in NC-17.
I'm sure he knew ahead of time.
He knew ahead of time that's exactly what was going to happen.
I mean, he's showing all the scenes that cause NC-17 ratings.
So of course, they literally can't do anything. They have to rate it NC-17. We're going to turn to Tom, because this is a personal topic for him that he's done a lot of research on and he really cares about. start his
NC-17
review.
films?
NC-17 films, yeah.
It's 17 and above. That's Tom's
Yeah, that's all he
forte.
watches pretty much. So Tom, tell us about adult filmmaking.
Tell us about your obsession.
Tom, tell us about how you feel about this film is not yet rated.
NC-17's a little tame for my taste. No,
That's what she said.
I saw this film is not yet rated a few years ago. And the reason I wanted to pair this with Bully is because there was a huge controversy with Bully over rating it R for the language that was in it, even though it was supposed to be something that high school children could see and learn from. But when I saw this film is not yet rated, it's one of those films that really stuck with me, and I kind of get up in arms now about the rating system, and especially when Bully came out and the Hunger Games came out at the same time. Anyway, we might get into that later, but I think this film is not rated is probably one of the most important documentaries about American culture, like media culture.
There was a lot of
I'm
points.
trying to think of another one, but I agree with you, but I'm trying to think of like the other ones that are in the
No,
canon.
I do, and there's a lot of points that they made in there saying how the rating choice, whether it was NC-17 or R, really directly related to the culture of the time, whether it was the 70s or I don't remember the point exactly, but recently there was with a lot of the global wars going on. The documentary about the U.S. soldiers and how that originally came out at NC-17, but then they went back to appeal and actually won, and it went from NC-17 to R because they said, "Hey, look, this is reality." You know,
How can you put a rating on reality?
Right.
Yeah.
But I agree. Definitely, it's a very key point to what's our culture at this point. What's the American culture at this point?
So, do you think, in general, would you recommend the movie? Is it good?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Anybody who is a moviephile, who watches, whether it be in the theater or DVD or Netflix, wherever, you definitely need to see this. It opened my eyes to a lot. I've been watching movies for decades, sadly. And this opened my eyes to a lot of stuff as far as how movies are perceived and at the same time how political they are or how political they can be. And that bothered the hell out of me.
At the same time, I felt like it felt like he was starting out to demonize the MPAA instead of sort of trying to figure out what's really going on here. And a lot of times I felt like, especially, I mean, he straight talked about how, there's a number of thrusts rule, right? So that if there's so many thrusts in a sex scene, then it becomes NC-17.
Right.
And I think
You show the hip, or you just show from the chest up, or
Which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, but it seemed like he was trying to, there's this evil organization trying to control things. And it seemed like maybe it's less about a control, something about control, than it is about they're setting these hard and fast rules that don't really work when it comes to all the different kinds of movies
they're not
that are
hard
out
and
there.
fast rules.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're not consistent rules, and we also don't know.
There's no
the biggest.
transparency.
We don't know what those rules are. If I would have very low problem with the MPAA if they came straight out and actually gave us a number of thrust rules. Like, and they said, look, you can only do 3. That's it, and we want no pubic hair. Like if we clearly knew like what it was. And they said, and this makes it NC-17.
It's
and if
far
they could
too
say
subjective.
that, then I would be okay with it. Yeah.
I was just thinking about it, and I think Kevin Smith made a fair point specifically related to the war movies and how if there's violence without bloodshed, that should be rated R.
That was a good
violence
point.
with bloodshed and with all the guts and stuff hanging out. Probably not on the
like why was Saving Private Ryan
not on the Saving Private Ryan level
rated more harshly than Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand his point of this is what happens. This is the product of violence and a deterrent, basically, to violence, where you get the people who don't get hurt. They're superheroes. They never get shot by a bullet at all, and that's glorifying. Based on what he says is any shade of true. I feel that the fact that they don't, through the appeals process, don't allow you to compare your movie
That's
to
ridiculous.
another
Precedent,
movie.
the idea of precedent.
It's like, how can you say that this movie is any different than my movie in this scene or anything like that?
Yeah.
And it just...
Actually, they changed that now.
I was going to say, that was going to be my question, was, did anyone get kicked off? Did anyone get... I mean, it's probably...
Although I understand the reasoning for that, because you can say, I mean, you can pick out pieces and say, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand the reasoning. Pick out pieces and say, well, this is the same as this, when tonally...
It might not be.
It might not be, and that matters.
They have full-fledged nudity in Schindler's List, but it's dealt very differently.
Exactly.
But then you can argue that point to not allow admission of precedent. That's law.
Yeah, I agree.
When I heard that, I was going, "Holy crap!"
Not in a private corporate setting.
That's actually my biggest problem. It seems like they operate above any sort of law. Mm-hmm. You know,
that's just.
But they did
because you submit your thing to them. But it's this monopolized thing. They are the only rater out there.
I think it's good that there is a rating system.
Yeah.
It's good to have kind of like a guide as to content in a movie. I think it's a step up from the Hays Code.
Yes.
Where there were things you just were not allowed to have in a movie.
Yeah.
Which was very moralistic and
it was direct censorship.
Yeah,
period.
Direct censorship.
Yeah.
My biggest problem is the lack of transparency and why they feel they need to be so secretive about it. Mm-hmm. You know. Mm-hmm. But now there is a little more transparency, and I think it's a result of this movie coming out, and now everybody knows who they are. Mm-hmm. So now you are allowed to.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those people were fired.
You are allowed to cite precedent.
Or quit. Yeah.
And now they make it public who's on the board.
Oh, do they?
According to IMDb.
I wanted to look that up because I said after watching this much, any corporation could not escape that much damning information.
Yeah.
Without change. And so if that did happen, that's good. That's good to see.
I know for me, when it comes to, I don't even pay attention to ratings. I go straight to the IMDb parental guide.
I really like
which
that. Which
doesn't rate anything. It just tells you anything that might possibly be objectionable.
Yeah.
And lists all that stuff. Instead of like saying, well, this is rated this. It just lists out the things that...
It tells you what things occur.
So we took my daughter to see Snow White, and I knew something was coming. And so as soon as that scene started, there was because I knew I was able to judge when that was coming.
Right.
So...
For you audio listeners, that was a hand over the eye.
Yeah, I covered Tom's eyes because he's too young for...
Tom can't see.
I didn't realize that's there, and that's good to know. So if you go to IMDb, where would you find that?
It's
scroll
parental
down,
guide.
It's under parental guide, and they ask that people don't put any... They just list what occurs. Just put the facts.
Spoilers. Just sort of like this, a man says shit 35 times. And,
a man gets his arm cut off, and then you see the blood spurt. Or, a man gets shot. Right,
I use that all the time, even for
sex
myself.
And you see boobies. It will literally tell you what is in there. We're also very happy.
Actually, the MPAA has started doing that. They started doing that a few years ago because it used to be they just put the rating on there, and then sometime in the early 2000s they started putting.
They started
content.
saying why.
Yeah,
which is good. So they're getting better.
They almost adopted a similar thing that the TV systems have. Right?
I think it was after the TV.
Yeah, where they break it out and they say, sexual content, adult language.
Yeah, this program is rated mature for violence, sex scenes, and this.
Mm-hmm. I look at that and I'm going, it looks boring. Change it to I want violence. Or,
where's the violent one?
I want lots of letters underneath those.
Let's do our comparison. Steve, you had a film, Swallow. Thank you. Steve, you had a film that you wanted to give us... that you wanted to give us...
That was whiskey, by the way.
Yeah. What is your film that you want to do your random comparison, your random flip chart? So you're going to compare, this film is not yet rated to...
to Sucker Punch.
Really?
And it's not because...
Sucker Punch should have been R.
Yeah, I mean, it's more the...
Was that it?
Okay, I wasn't sure.
No, Sucker Punch
That
was
was
PG-13.
Really?
Yeah, that should... It should
That's why I wanted to compare.
That should have been R.
It should have easily been
Totally
R.
should have been R.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that was brought up, Kevin
There's 3
Smith
scenes
again,
of rape in it.
that brought up is that violence against women
Yes.
should be
top.
rated NC-17 instantly. And Sucker Punch, although I actually do enjoy that movie in a very like pure, no, a purely like
As exploitation.
yes, for what it is,
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I don't think it's a good movie,
No.
but it's an enjoyable movie in a certain mindset. But the fact that it's so
Deviant mindset.
Yeah, no, yes.
Yes,
in a deviant
exactly.
mindset. Yeah.
if you're just like pure like hot girls against zombie Nazis,
Yes.
like mindset, then yeah, it's a fun movie. But it's extremely the way it treats women, the way there's several attempted rape scenes
And he's
in that.
he's very dumb director because he thinks he's treating them as like heroes.
Well,
and
he
he's
sets
still
out for
objectifying.
something.
Yes, and he completely
And he like loses himself.
he gets
and
distracted
just,
by boobs.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know.
He's like,
Haven't we all been there?
boobies.
So
That's my impression of Zack Snyder directing. Yeah, that's
I have an idea. Oh, boobies.
yeah.
That's basically
He got distracted for like 30 minutes of 300 and then came back. Yeah.
Now, I gotta say,
What
though, I'm
happened?
curious, how did that get PG-13?
That's the biggest question I have about that.
which is
film.
why I want to.
Yeah. Brian, you want to say something?
I honestly think that movie was PG-13 because of the target audience that they were trying to get.
Yeah.
And if they made that an R-rated movie, that movie was not going to make money. There was no way that...
That hardly made money
It still didn't make money. Yeah.
It didn't make money?
No.
Well,
okay.
It made
Yeah.
very little money, and it went straight to DVD, and I watched it a couple of months ago.
It wasn't the smash they were hoping.
It wasn't
No.
on
No,
Netflix.
but
it was even.
it's still-
it was like
I
on
think it's still
IMDb or
budget.
something.
But
Had it been rated R,
Oh, there
had it been rated R, it would have no shot it made its budget
No.
Yeah.
because you're not going to be able to convince your parents, hey mom, I want to go see this movie with hot girls like
Right.
killing people. Your parents aren't going to be like, okay, I'm going to go and take you to this movie. It's just not going to happen. So to make it a PG-13 movie to even attempt to make its money back, I think that was really the...
I mean, that was last year. It's still clear. So are we saying this is still like a movie that clearly manipulated MPA's rating system?
Oh yeah. There's no doubt about that movie. Should have been rated at least R. I think it should have been rated NC-17.
But it goes directly back to the people on the board. Do they represent, and this is one of the things I kept thinking to myself, do they represent fair scope of the American society?
Right.
And
I don't think.
I completely disagree.
Yeah.
I'm not
Or the
saying...
people who are supposed to be making the ratings, because they
Right.
always said that these ratings were for. I mean, they had said
The ratings are to protect the children.
so they're supposed to be parents of children, which
Right.
I would be completely okay with if it's parents just of children.
Right.
Sure, you don't need a senior citizen there because these ratings are for
Right.
people like
They're
you who
for-
have kids to
Right.
decide, do you want these kids to watch it or not?
Right.
And the raters weren't. They had older kids, and so they were trying.
Or they had been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, you need to cycle through it. There are certain jobs where you need new blood in. You need to get a fresh perspective in. And hopefully, since this documentary's come out, hopefully it's changed. I mean, you said that it sounded like there were some changes that have taken place, and that's great. But I really, and almost on both sides, to not only allow certain films that in the past they may have said, well, this is too risque, I don't want to see two women. This really should be R, not NC-17. But in the same respect, like you were saying with Sucker Punch, take films that, well, we've gotten too desensitized to violence. No, I'm sorry, you can't, watch people get, multiple limbs chopped off or get put through a grinder and spit out.
They mentioned Sin City.
Yeah,
in this
that's
film.
right.
That's a film that I think that film should have been rated NC-17. Yeah.
When I saw that film, I was like, if this wasn't shot the way it was,
I love it. It's
Like,
very
the only thing that got
Great.
this the R was to me was the style.
Stylized
stylized
Yeah.
violence that they were able to
But
get
you're
away with
watching
it.
somebody rip somebody else's private parts out of their body with their bare hand.
Yeah. And you clearly see it in
That
Bruce
is
Willis's
NC-17.
hands.
Like, how can you?
Yeah.
I want to know. I want to be warned about that ahead of time.
Or I mean, and there's just throughout. That's like one shot. The rest of the film, there's constant dismemberments.
Yeah.
There's faces being
constant
slammed and
utilization
rushed.
of women.
Yes. Yeah.
What I think would be an interesting way to do it is to almost do tiers of raters. So you get these people who are like, okay, this film's rated PG. Should we go to the PG-13 rating? Here, you people, now it's your job to watch this movie and decide whether or not this movie should be PG-13. And then once it goes through that, you go to see R and then NC-17. Maybe not that many. Maybe you can go, this one people say, okay, this is PG-13. Right. You can decide whether or not something is G, PG, or PG-13. You have children under the age of 15 years old. Right. We'll just say 15 for example. And then once it hits that rating, then you go up to people with children of over a certain age, maybe high school age children, and then you can decide, should this be R? Should this be NC-17?
I also think that it shouldn't be one board. That's what kind of store me is it's just 9 or 10 people, right? I think there should be, if you can't come to a general consensus, if there's a fair amount of dissension, what really bothered me was then like the chairman of the board got to then make the sway vote. Yeah. Who already got a vote.
They already got a vote, and they got to make another vote.
I think there should be at least like a second board or some kind of an alternate group that takes another look at it and without knowing what the other one decision was.
I think no matter how you have it structured, having any one group of people deciding for everybody
there's going to be issues.
Is always a bad idea. So if you just list out and let people decide for themselves, that's for
the IMDb rating.
Yeah, I really am. I think, if you just say, okay, these are the possible things that people could object to, and then I can decide whether or not I think they're objectionable.
Right, you could, and you as a responsible
And if you don't take the time to do that for your kids, you're a bad
but here's the thing. You could do that, but then the people at the theater, they're not going to do that. And at some point, your daughter's going to walk into that theater with her friends, and they're going to look up, and they're supposed to be... I don't let her have friends. And they're supposed to be seeing, like High School Musical 5, and they instead decide to go see, like, butt raping in space. And you don't want to see that movie, man.
I don't want to see that.
Exactly.
On a slightly tamer level, I was thinking the same thing, though, because...
That's what the ratings are for.
Once you remove the ratings
system... Is that a sequel to something?
Once you remove the rating system...
No, it's an great original movie.
Once the rating system's gone... Then
sci-fi. Maybe we should do it for the podcast.
Then a child can go up and say, "I want to go see this movie," and without a rating system, there's no one to tell them, "No, you can't go see."
The ratings were supposed to be. They're under this guise of it's supposed to keep like theaters and production companies accountable, so that they don't let the children go see it, and to give parents a bit of a guide so that they can simply understand it. If you just provide them the guide, then there's no accountability on the business standpoint because. We used to get, when I worked in a movie theater, you would get slammed hard if you got caught allowing kids into rated R films without a parent. Yeah. All right, so the second film we picked was Bully. The main reason we picked it, this is another documentary, so that's one reason. It's a documentary about, you guessed it, bullying in basically in schools across America. The big reason we picked it, though, was because there was a controversy with it where it had initially been rated R for... some harsh language, especially a scene. The big reason they were talking about, there's a scene in the film. If we all saw it at the same theater, you would have seen it, where one of the bullies tells this young kid Alex that he's going to shove a broomstick up his ass and stab him. That was a scene that they specifically marked out was extremely graphic language. Yeah, it's on the bus.
There's a lot.
I remember it, but.
Okay.
And there's a lot of graphic things like that where they mention, like, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to do this to you.
I'm going to stab you, I'm going to fuck you up.
And there's a fair amount of things like that. And so for that, it had originally been rated R, but then they fought for it a little bit, and I think that they may have cut certain things, and it got moved down to PG-13. So that was a big reason why we wanted to choose.
They did a re-edit that brought it down to PG-13 for the chain theaters, but they also released it in an unrated.
And I think the version that we saw was unrated because it didn't seem to hold back at all. Yeah. This is a movie about. I'll start and then I'm gonna turn to Kevin to just talk about. This is a hard movie to watch in the first place. I can imagine, especially if you have kids, it's a hard thing. As someone who's going into the education business, who's going to be a teacher, this is a very hard thing for me to watch. I was very concerned about this film for two reasons. Because I'd been reading up on it At one of the schools I teach on, we had been discussing it with other teachers. Is like, should we show this film? Because they do a lot of work with actually like bullying prevention. And I was concerned about two things. I was concerned about, would they show a solution to bullying? Because from what I had heard, it was just examples of bullying.
Yeah.
And would they show it from the bully's point of view? And we'll get into that. But what I want to do this is to say that it's very hard to watch this film and pull yourself aside and look at it as just a film.
Yeah.
It's very hard to watch it and not look at it from a personal standpoint. It's very affecting. And if I look at it from just as a documentary, I think it's absolutely brilliant and gorgeous. I think it's an amazing documentary. Once I start getting to the personal issues, I have issues with it. But we'll get into that. But I'm going to turn to Kevin to tell us, because he wants to talk about how you said you could only talk about this from a topical standpoint.
Right. When I sat down to watch it, knowing kind of the same things, I had to remind myself over and over again, okay, just try and sit back and watch it as a film. Mm-hmm. Watch it as a documentary and not get personally attached.
You can't do that.
Whether it was the fact that I have 2 children or that I was in education for 6 years or that I was going to be an administrator and I was appalled at how the administrators were behaving in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I tried repeatedly to say, okay, let me watch the film as a film and the message it's trying to get across. I think it did a very good job. And one of the things I would love to see, and you touched on it briefly, is I would love to see this or something like this shown in every high school across the country. Mm-hmm. To bring not to the light of the students, but to the light of the teachers, the administration, the parents, exactly what could be going on.
Well, and it will help the students in the sense of showing them that they need to speak up. In the sense of they need to talk to parents and tell them explicitly what is happening to them. That's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Because a lot of students feel a lot of shame for what's happening to them. The main student we watched in this, Alex,
felt so bad.
And he wouldn't. And the filmmakers had to intervene and show his parents, because you would see his mom would reach out to him and he'd be like, and so the parents would just kind of brush it off because they didn't realize what was actually happening.
Right.
Yes, the bully needs to be punished, but the victim needs to be able to forgive. Because if the victim doesn't forgive, a lot of times what will happen is they will turn into another bully. They will start thinking that this is the way that you treat people to get your way. This is the only way that I can ever even get through anything. And you have to hold both kids accountable. Because the biggest thing that the biggest issue I have with this film is it doesn't show the side of the bully. I have yet to meet, and this is just from a personal experience, I've yet to meet a bully that was not bullied in the first place. I've yet to meet a bully that was not pushed around by somebody else and created. And this is just this issue where we always forget that, and they mention the bully, the bullies. That's another child. That's somebody else's kid. The bully is somebody else who needs to be not just punished, needs to understand exactly what they're doing, needs to be brought to a place where they can have a healthy relationships with other people. Like, we yell, like, they need to be punished, they need to be all these things. That's not good enough.
See, the situation that I see is, so watching this, I kept thinking of Clockwork Orange, because
where kids just run.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I don't like the movie is because the whole sort of theme of Clockwork Orange is that there's a period in kids' human beings' lives where they're just vicious.
Yeah.
They're vicious and they prey on the weak, and there's no stopping that. That's just part of growing up, and eventually you learn to overcome that deficiency. And some people overcome it earlier than others, but everybody has that nature in them. They're vicious and they prey on the weak. Mm-hmm. And in that scene, what she's doing is treating them as if they're equally culpable.
Yes.
And I don't know.
That's an issue.
It's one person who's giving into that viciousness, preying on the weak. And that, at least in schools, they can't do anything outside of schools. That needs to be just flat out stopped.
Yeah.
You say, no, you cannot do this. This is unacceptable behavior, and you just stop it. You don't try to say, well, you're both kind of responsible for this, and, if you just be friends, everything will be better.
She's trying to stop it. She's saying, it's over.
But her attitude is if you just become friends, everything will be better. And that's not, she's not addressing the fact that there's this aspect of human nature that's just pure viciousness.
So then how do you address that? You have to grow out of it?
No, you educate the administration and you educate the parents on how to deal with this, how to recognize it, how to stop it.
That's the main thing. Yeah.
All right, so how do you do that? Because I actually think this movie doesn't do a good job of that.
It doesn't.
I think that it does a very poor job of that. That's my biggest criticism.
I think its intention is not necessarily to educate in the right way. I think it's just to show people, look, this is what's going on.
Yes.
I mean, the parents of Alex even said, I had no idea it was going on to this level. Well, yeah, today I got choked out and somebody stabbed me with a pencil. If my kid came home and said that, I would flip.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
I mean, it was kind of creepy earlier today. It's the last day of school for us, for some of us that have kids. My eldest daughter came home and I asked her, I said, how was your day today? And she said, oh, okay, pretty good. I said, what'd you do? Oh, I don't know. I couldn't remember. And that's a typical answer, and that's fine. And so I try and pull it out of her, see what she did. But at one point, I distinctly remember thinking about this movie. And I said, look, did anybody bother you today? Did anybody hurt you? Did anybody pick on you? And she said, well, so-and-so did this. And I kind of got a little bit more out of the story. And based upon, not just from this movie, but from other experiences, kind of figured out, okay, well, it's just, in this particular instance, from what I can tell, what she said, okay, the kid was mean. But it wasn't a big deal. She'll get over it. Tomorrow they'll be best friends. But it's the fact that, and I'm not trying to say I'm a great parent, but parents getting involved, parents trying to understand what kids are doing. You're never going to know what a child is going through in their other life when they're at school, because it's a completely different life that they have. Right. They spend 8 to 10 hours a day with another family.
Yeah.
180 days a year. It's really, and they even mention this many times in the movie, when a parent sends a kid to school, they're trusting the adult at that institution to look after the well-being of their child. And if they're not, something's got to be done about it.
Yeah.
So, but there needs to be.
So what do you do?
There needs to be responsibility on all ends, though. The parents, the teachers, the administrators, the law enforcement officials. Yeah. Like, maybe even up to, like, the town administrators. Like, I mean, there needs to be unification. Yeah. They need to get together and say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to address this issue. How do you do that? I don't know, because I'm not, whatever, but...
I know there are some schools that I go into for work for different things that have police officers in the buildings. Definitely in many high school settings. I really don't know how many, but I think it's a great thing to have the idea of the law in the building. So kids understand you're going to be held accountable. The old adage, well, until I'm adult, I can get away with anything I want. It doesn't fly anymore. We're seeing, sadly, too many kids nowadays that are doing things that were unthinkable, a decade or two.
An 11-year-old committed suicide.
Yeah.
And there seems to be, I don't know if I use the term epidemic, but...
Right.
There's increased occurrences of it.
Yeah. It's increasing in frequency that young a child would see no way out.
Right.
Yeah.
There was, I don't know if you guys noticed it, at one point it was towards the end of the movie when they were having the rally. I forget which city it was, but they were panning across the audience and somebody had a map up of the United States.
With all the red dots.
With all the red dots.
Children that committed suicide.
And that was just chilling to see how many red dots there were across the country. I mean, it was amazing.
And there are schools that have the zero tolerance policy where they have cameras in the school. Someone says this person's bullying me. They check the cameras. If that person's doing it, they're suspended immediately. No, like shake hands and work it out.
But I agree with Nate that you need to approach that as with the understanding that these are two children. The bullies.
The bully's a child too.
But I realize that.
And not just have to be like, a 1-to-1
the punishment
ratio.
And then you're good, because sometimes also then the kid who was the victim will just start to get this sense if you just punish the bully and let the victim go in his own way, this is something people don't always think about. now the victim just thinks that's the cycle of life, that they're going to always be picked on, and hopefully someone will come and protect them.
I mean, they even show 2 examples of that in the movie. The girl, she pulls a gun on the people who are picking on her on the bus, and then even Alex says so himself, is like, these people are picking on me so much to the point where I want to become
actually the bully. I believe you have to actually intervene and help these kids understand, I mean, that their actions have consequences in every way, and that a victim, and you want to try and empower the victim to help them to understand that they can stand up to a bully a little bit, and you don't just want to push them off and be like, that's it. You still want to be there to protect them, but you want to let them know that, I mean, because I was bullied as well in like middle school and things like this, and it wasn't until I was willing to stop letting it bother me. There were a couple times things had to be intervened on, but it wasn't until I actually would start standing up with it or stop, just kind of letting taunting and things like that roll off of you.
I remember
stopped.
The way I turned it around is I let loose on a kid.
Yeah, I had
and I beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
That was how I turned, and then people left me. It was actually 2 girls that would. No, seriously.
You beat up 2 girls?
No. They would pick on me constantly, and not like physically, but they would constantly pick on me. And the way I turned it around is there was another kid who thought he would join in, and I beat the shit out of him, and everybody left me alone after that.
Yeah,
that's not the appropriate response.
No, I'm not saying it's the appropriate response.
Sometimes,
I didn't. No.
Sometimes throwing a punch.
Sometimes not throwing a punch.
Yeah, I mean, you have to show that you're going to stand up for yourself.
That's how I dealt with a couple of bullies here and there throughout my elementary school years.
Yeah. But it took me a long time to figure that out.
In the face, and then okay. Well, I guess you're not just gonna sit there and take it. So,
there's unfortunately, the fact that there are any kids that get the idea from home life, honestly, that in order to succeed, you have to put down the weak.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, in addition to many others, that I really think is part of the problem. Because, I mean, like you said, kids that you punch in the face or whatever, somehow you turn them away from you, they're going to find the next weakest kid.
Yeah.
And it's that mindset that really bothers me and that, among other things, needs to be addressed.
Yeah. I think the movie also probably could have expanded further on the bullying. It focused on bullying in schools.
Yeah.
Which is all well and good, but I mean, you get bullying on the internet. You get bullying because you have the kids playing video games online.
Yeah.
So you get kids, and there's no separation from that. So a 13-year-old could be playing with a 25-year-old, 30-year-old person, and the 30-year-old's not going to be censoring themselves to suit whoever's playing with themselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you also have to look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You said playing with themselves.
Which is very hard to do while you're playing a video game. I mean, that's a 2-hand job.
But the video game?
I mean, the other thing is it's still, I mean, I think you mentioned it's a human thing, and that's something that Clockwork Orange shows is that if there isn't an intervention, Alex is going to continue on with this, right? Bad Alex in Clockwork Orange, not Alex in the movie, and not Alex in the bully. There's nothing you can do to stop it,
right?
And it's
that's their premise.
Yeah, but it's really
something you grow out of.
We still see it, right? Adults will still bully other adults. We probably see it in the workplace. You'll see that one guy who just gets picked on and always made fun of and things like that. So this is not so. What makes it to me so complicated is that we disguise it as an education issue. It is a human issue.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I'm curious, though, to see if other countries, if
it's a cultural thing.
Yeah, if it's a cultural thing. Or to what extent is it a cultural thing?
And how it differs in different countries.
Right. For the same reason, like we're talking about with this film is not yet rated. In other countries, they look at violence differently than we do. So it'd be interesting to see if they have the same problems and how they've dealt with it.
I mean, I didn't want to get into it too much, but there's definitely...
I don't know, 36 minutes.
You could talk about the culture of violence, and they touch on it in this film is not yet rated when they're talking about the difference between the bloodlessness of a PG-13 movie
right,
versus showing the consequences of violence like they do in Saving Private Ryan.
Right.
And that's why I was going to connect it to Bowling for Columbine, because that movie is completely about the culture of violence in America. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, coming from the focal point of the shooting at Columbine, all these elements, how violence has so saturated the media, that
it's going to be really
kids just grow up in this desensitized culture of violence.
It's a hard thing with American culture, because American culture is very competitive. Mm-hmm. It's very individualistic.
And the other thing that I'm talking about in this film is not rated is in the past 50 years the military films.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I forget who was it said it, but that there's America has become a lot more warlike in the past 50 years.
Yeah.
And that a lot of it has to do with the way that the military has censored the
Although I kind of disagreed with that, because I can think of plenty of movies that show the military in a negative light.
Yeah.
So,
but
back in World War II,
recent movies or
no, even
recent?
Now,
no, recent.
Even now, there's a lot that
recent movies.
Three Kings.
Recent movies, you'll find it more. But like you were saying,
because the independent movies have exploded in the mid '90s.
If you go back 10, 20 years ago,
80s and 70s,
you won't see that as much. It was like,
hey,
go USA.
Yeah, and if you do, they're
Okay, so next week we are going to be watching the much anticipated Brave. This is Pixar's, the first Pixar original since, WALL-E? Up, yeah. Mm-hmm. Since Up, they've done some, they've done
Toy Story
a lot of sequels. 2. Yeah, but I mean, those are the two summer movies, So this is the first non-sequel in a while. And we've all been really looking forward to it. It's a production that's been a little bit troubled, but hopefully it'll live up to the standards. And then the other movie we're watching is The Secret of Kells. This is a movie that I watched, it may have been a year ago now. It's been a while. It's an animated film that's done in the style of The Book of Kells. So that's the style of the animation. Mm-hmm. And it's about the origins of the Book of Kells. So, Kevin.
We talked about watching The Secret of Kells a while ago, around Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yeah,
sometime.
we're going to do it we're doing for St. Patty's Day.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, it seems a lot longer ago.
It was a lot longer ago because we were going to talk about it with Hugo.
Yes.
I've been trying to get it on the podcast for a while.
And at the time, I watched about half of it, and I can remember some pieces. I'm hoping it was just the day that I was in. I really wasn't into it. Mm-hmm. It was hard to keep watching it. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about that. I'm definitely looking forward to Brave, but I'm getting angry every time I watch TV with my kids because they keep showing more stuff in the trailers, and I don't want to see it. Because when I sit down for the movie, I'm going to go, okay, this is how they piece the trailers together. And I don't want to see that.
Pixar does stuff like that. Well, they'll give you a little bit, and I still get the sense that there's I haven't seen the movie.
I hope so.
You know what I mean? They're really good about that.
Looking forward to definitely Brave. I'm actually probably going to watch that first, and then The Secret of Kells to kind of get me in the positive mindset.
I'm excited for both of these movies. I think Secret of Kells has been in my Netflix queue ever since I got Netflix. And I just haven't gotten around to watching it.
It was nominated for an Oscar, so it's...
I think they made me want to watch it less.
Nominated for an Oscar made you want to watch it less? Okay, that works. But Brave, I mean, it's good to have an original Pixar piece again. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're usually stronger films than the sequels. Not the case with Toy Story 3, but
they've only done one sequel though. I mean,
We've only done one sequel?
One sequel that's been a problem, and that's Cars 2.
Okay.
Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3, we would all agree, are fantastic.
Yes.
Right? So I'm excited for these because I still don't, even though Pixar had Cars 2, I don't fault them for that. Everything else they've done is amazing.
They have a lot of sequels planned, and I think that's part of dragging it
University,
down.
that's it.
Yeah.
And maybe an Incredibles one when Brad Bird wants to make it. When and if. So I trust them, I'm excited for them, and until I see a film that they have screwed up, I'm going to continue being excited for them. I purposely didn't watch Cars 2, so I could still,
So you can see them as infallible?
So that I can see them as infallible, yeah. And I'm excited for the comparison with The Secret of Kells.
You're an enabler, that's what you are.
100%. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to Brave because it's Pixar. Cars 2 left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Had some great animation sequences, but the story was really just not... I don't want to see a movie about Mater. I just don't. I'm also worried because of the production problems with them firing their first female director after she spent like 4 or 5 years in the project, replacing her, and then, marketing this as the first Pixar movie with a female heroine. I don't know.
There could be from what I read, there could be a multitude of reasons for their firing her, though. They could be completely legit.
But then again, I'm probably not going to be here next week anyway. So, and Secret of Kells, I've been wanting to watch that for a while myself. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to both these movies. You guys have said everything I would have said. So, yeah. That's all for this week of Buried Cinema. You can check us on the web. We're at www.buriedcinema.com. You can email us at buriedcinema@gmail.
You can, after you watch the full 45 minutes, check out the shorter audio or the minisodes if we put them out.
We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter.
Hang your head, sir.
Put it out this week.
I believe that Movie Questions is broken at the time, but we will let you know when it's back up on our website.
If you subscribe to us on an RSS feed, please leave us a comment. If you download us on iTunes, leave us a comment. If you're checking us out on Stitcher, please vote for us. We really appreciate your responding to us. That's why we kind of changed around the format a little bit this week as well. So we love interacting with you, and we love to hear from you there.
Check out our written reviews at the Rampad at rampad.com. We're going to be starting this week writing articles about movies that have had a profound impact on our lives.
Yep.
It's going to be epic.
So next week, Kevin will try not to smack his ring.
I like movies.